and we will get started with the recording and get started with the show. Hello, this is Paul Hoyt. Welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. Office Hours, oops, let me go back to the beginning of the presentation. We started at slide 25 instead of starting at slide 1, so we'll start over. There we go. Welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. Office Hours is a relaxed, informal, free mentoring program filled with glitches and challenges and coughs as happens in normal conversation. Held every Monday at noon Pacific time, and the recordings available online along with many previous week's recording. And all of our recordings will be archived in our members area, which will start as soon as we get a good body of these recordings up there. The reasons I'm doing Office Hours are several. Number one is I know that being a successful small business owner, it can be a tremendous experience, but I also know that it's tough. I know that you need the training in order to go forward and really do the best job that you can. I want you to get to know me, and because I know when you do, you'll know that I really do care about you. I really do want you to succeed. I often say that I fall in love with every business owner that I've ever met. So if anybody raises their hand and says, I think I want to start a business, or I've been in business for a while, man, my heart just goes out to you, because I've been a small business person now for the last 13 years, and before that from 1980 through 1985. I've worked with a bunch of small businesses in the meantime and mentored and consulted with hundreds of businesses over the last 12 years. And I know how challenging it can be, and I want to do everything I can to help you succeed. Our agenda for this call, as all calls, is an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. Then we're going to have closing remarks, special offers, an invitation for next week's session, and then open questions and answers. Today's topic is old dog, new trick, accelerating your learning. There are things that you can do to accelerate your learning. I am an old dog, and I learn new tricks every single day, and you can do the same. As always, my presentations usually involve one or more of the key performance areas of business that I talk about in my first book, The Foundation Factor, that came out in 2004, and also talk about in almost everything I do from a consulting point of view and a training point of view. Those 7 key performance areas of leadership, marketing, sales, financial management, product development, operations and administration, and customer service. And as it turns out, the subject of today, accelerating learning and learning new tricks, covers every single one of them. Because as a small business owner, there are some fundamental success principles you need to learn in every single one of these areas of business. And you need to keep learning and keep learning and keep learning, because the world is changing rapidly, and I know we all know that. The pace of change continues to accelerate. So it's not a matter of learning once and having it down and never having to learn again. It's a matter of continual learning day after day after day after day. And I'm optimistic that the stuff that we're going to talk about today will help you learn even faster than you ever could learn before. In our agenda, we're going to talk about the challenge of learning. We're going to talk about the learning formula. We're going to look at the subject of how we learn, and with tips and techniques to help us accelerate our learning from a lot of different perspectives. We're going to look at the learning curve. We're going to look at forming habits. We'll talk about different levels of competence and steps to learning, and the learning pyramid as well. So I'm going to talk about each one of these subjects in today's call, but I want to start out with a quote from my Remember CD, an inspirational CD that I produced in 2005, and here it is. You have the astonishing power, the magnificent capacity to learn and grow and transform. You have been learning skills, languages, and attitudes both consciously and subconsciously from before you were born. You are learning right now, and you will never stop learning. Repetition and passion combine to give you the glorious ability to condition yourself to become the person you want to be through the power of your mind and through the power of controlled thought. But there's challenges in learning. The challenges for us as small business owners is that there is a whole bunch of stuff to learn. I've been studying the art and science of starting and growing businesses for years and years and years and years, and there's still a lot to learn. And a lot of times small business owners don't know what they don't know until they face a rather large problem. They almost always take the job without knowing what the job is and without being properly trained for it. That's the reason I created the training programs that I created. That's the reason for the Business Survival Bootcamp and the reason for Beyond Business Survival's training program that I have created, so that CEOs and small business owners can get the fundamental training in the success principles of business that they need to avoid making a lot of mistakes. And here's my learning formula that I hinted at a little bit in the quote that I gave you from my Remember CD. And here it is. It's your subconscious learning potential equals faith times focus times repetition times passion squared. And notice, please, that that's not faith plus focus plus repetition. It's times. And for those of you who are mathematically gifted at all, you realize that you have to have a little of each. If any one of those is zero, if you've got zero faith or zero focus, or you never pay attention to anything and you don't have at least one encounter with a learning objective, and if you've got zero passion, you're not going to learn at all. That's why the multiplying sign is there. That's why the little star representing multiply is there, because you have to have at least a little bit of every single one of those in order to learn it all. And ideally, you would have tremendous faith and great focus and many, many repetitions and powerful, powerful passion so that you can learn very quickly. Notice, please, that passion is squared because it is the passion, the emotion, the intense desire that we have to learn something that is more valuable than any of those things. If you have intense desire, if you really want to learn something, then it doesn't take as many repetitions, it doesn't take as much focus, and it doesn't take as much faith. But I encourage you to have as much of each one of these as you possibly can in your learning formula so that you can learn more rapidly. I want to talk a little bit about learning curve, and as it turns out, there are several different types of learning curves. I went online and did a lot of research in preparation for this presentation, so you wouldn't have to, but of course I encourage you to go back and follow up if you want. As it turns out, that you can get doctorates and masters of education in learning theories and learning formulas and steps to learning, many of which we're going to talk about today. So, a 20-minute conversation we're going to have about the way people learn and tips and techniques to accelerate your learning process are really just the tip of the iceberg. But I think that you can still learn a tremendous amount from what I'm going to share with you. Here's one of them, the learning curve. The learning curve says simply that when we learn a new task, we typically start off slowly, that it's a little bit unusual to us, it's a little bit strange, so that we start slowly, and then the pace of our learning picks up to where we have some very steep acceleration, and then after we've learned a tremendous amount, we start to hit a little plateau. And after we've learned 90 or 95% as much as we're ever going to learn, then the pace of learning slows down. But this is the classic learning curve. And it's very important for you when you go to learn something new to understand where you are on that learning curve. If it's tough and you're having a real challenge understanding a particular issue, it's probably because you're at the slow beginning portion of the learning curve. And if you stick with it with the proper amount of persistence and passion and repetitions, that you'll very soon get into the part where you have a steep acceleration and you learn a tremendous amount very quickly. So think about that whenever you're thinking about learning something. This is the classic S-shaped learning curve. Now, as it turns out, there are another couple of learning curves as represented in this particular rising and falling metric. And I want to give credit to the people who put these on the internet. This particular one's by Alan Fletcher, copyright 2013. It's licensed with the Creative Commons attribution, which means if I give him attribution, I can use it in this program. So thank you very much, Alan, for sharing this picture online. Essentially what this says is that with experience, our time falls. In other words, those things that we want to do get easier and easier. And if we're scoring at all, our score gets higher and higher. So for example, if I need to learn how to do cash flow, and we talked about how to do cash flow in a presentation that we did a few weeks ago. Let's say that we need to work on our cash flow, or we recognize that we have a problem and we need to learn how to do cash flow. The first time that we do it, it's going to be tough for us. We're going to be way down at the bottom in the red line on the learning curve, and the time that it takes us to do a cash flow forecast the first time we do it is going to be very, very high. But as we practice, as we have more repetitions, as we get more comfortable with it, the time that it takes to do our cash flow forecast will fall, and the quality with which we do it will rise. So that's another type of learning curve. I'll go back one slide real quick. We're very slow in the beginning, then we get a steep acceleration, and then we hit some sort of a plateau. And restated with a different diagram, it's slow in the beginning, it takes us a long time, and then as we get more and more experience, we accelerate on the learning curve, and our score or quality of what we do is vastly increased over time. So that's a really good way of looking at the learning curve in a couple of different types of ways. Here's another way of looking at learning, that there are different levels of learning. When we start out, we have some basic knowledge about a subject, or we become acquainted with it in some way, and then we learn to apply that knowledge so that that book learning becomes an actual skill set that we can do. And then after we practice that skill a long time, it becomes integrated into who we are. I'm going to come back to the cash flow analogy here. So you may not have really ever realized that you had a tremendous value. It was valuable to you as a business owner to do cash flow forecasting. But at some point in time, you look at your bank account and you say, "Oh my goodness, I'm running out of cash. I better start to do something to predict my cash balances and better manage my cash." So you develop the skill sets. You listen to one of my webinars. You talk to a CFO or a bookkeeper, and you start to develop the skill set of doing cash flow forecasting. You begin to apply the knowledge that you have learned about the importance of cash flow. And then after a while, after you've done it enough times, it becomes integrated into who you are. And almost everything that you do, you're focusing on the cash flow aspects of every transaction that you have. Whenever you encounter a new customer, you're thinking about getting a down payment or a prepayment. Whenever you're talking to a vendor, you're wondering of when I can write them the check. Can I put it on a credit card and get for a payment for 30 days? Can I ask for 60-day payment terms? Can I put this on installment payments? You begin to think about cash flow as an integral part of your business. And cash flow, by the way, one of the reasons I'm using that example is because that is the #1 success principle in the key performance area of financial management. So I'm going to use that periodically throughout the presentation today. So we have levels of learning. First we become aware of something, then we start to get some knowledge on it, then we start to get the skill set, and once we get the skill set and apply that knowledge time after time after time, it becomes integrated into who we are, and it becomes our mindset. As it turns out, there are something else on a learning curve too, on the forming of habits. And I'm going to give credit to Jason Selk. I looked up a Forbes article published in April of this year, written by Jason, who talked about the formation of habits. And as it turns out, there are some things that we learn that have an almost opposite learning curve to the one I talked about a few minutes ago. A few minutes ago, I talked about learning curves where it's really hard at first, and then it starts to get easier, and then we accelerate our learning, and then it starts to be easy for us and becomes second nature for us. As it turns out, sometimes when we form habits, it's exactly the opposite. It starts out easy at first, and we begin to make very rapid progress, and then something else happens to us. And I'm going to use the analogy of a diet here, where we're changing our eating patterns, focused on becoming healthier and perhaps losing weight. At first, the first meal that we eat, cottage cheese and grapefruit, turns out to be, that was pretty good. I think I can do that for a while. We do that for 2 or 3 days, and we think, wow, I'm making rapid progress. I've lost 5 pounds in the last 3 days just on my cottage cheese and grapefruit diet. But then we hit phase 2, which is the fight-through phase. All of a sudden, it becomes tough for us to stay on that diet. After about day 3 or day 4, we start thinking, I'm getting sick and tired of cottage cheese and grapefruit. And it's important for us to recognize that we've hit phase 2 of habit formation, and that is the fight-through phase. But always ask yourself, and again, I'm giving credit to Jason here, ask yourself 2 very important questions. How will I feel when I do this? How will I feel when I change my diet? How will I feel when I get into better shape and lose weight? And then ask yourself the converse question, how will I feel if I don't accomplish this? How will I feel if I give up? And if that doesn't work, to keep you focused and keep you fighting through the tough part of forming a habit, then ask yourself the question, how will I feel in 5 years if I do this? How will I feel in 5 years if I don't do this? Keep your focus on the value of changing your habits. Keep your focus on the value of learning new tips and techniques and accelerating your learning in the area of eating habits. And then comes phase 3, which is when it becomes second nature. It becomes second nature for us to have reduced caloric intake. It becomes second nature for us to do our cash flow forecasting. Everything becomes second nature to us. And Jason cautions for 3 different things which can derail us when we get into the second nature phase or as we approach the second nature phase. First of all is the discouragement monster. When it gets tough, watch out for being discouraged. Focus on fighting through it. Focus on getting to that next stage of the learning curve where it starts to get easier. Focus on starting to apply the knowledge that you have so it becomes a skill set. Don't get discouraged because in almost every task there can be moments when it's tough to take that next step. We hit a plateau and we need to focus on the repetition and the passion behind it so that we can get through those challenges. Watch out for disruptions, like I'm going on vacation, so I'm going to get off my diet. Like, I'm too busy to do cash flow forecasting this week. Disruptions and distractions can really derail us when it comes to forming habits. And the last one here is he calls the seduction of success. And oh man, is that part of my personal experience. I quit smoking cigarettes on October the 10th, 1985. That was a long time ago. It took me about 15 attempts to quit smoking cigarettes. And I got trapped in the seduction of success every single time. I would quit smoking for 2 months and then I would start again. I would quit smoking for 6 months and then I would start again and smoke for 2 years. Then I'd quit smoking for a week and then I would start again. And it was the seduction of success that got me every single time. I would think, I haven't had a cigarette in about 3 months. I think I have whipped this habit. I think if I just have one more puff off a cigarette, that would taste really, really good. And it did. And so I had a puff, then I had a whole cigarette, and then I had 3 cigarettes a day. And before I knew it, I was back up to my half a pack or a full pack of cigarettes a day. It was that seduction of success, thinking that I had beat the monster, thinking that I had, that I had cured of that addiction that caused me to have overconfidence, a lot of overconfidence, and take another puff again. Well, as it turns out, I haven't had a puff of cigarette since October the 10th, 1985, because I finally gained at least some measure of humility when it came towards breaking that pattern and realizing how addictive nicotine was to me. So there may be other areas in your life where you have the seduction of success. I lost 20 pounds. Man, I am really good at this. I think I'll have another piece of chocolate pie. I lost 15 pounds, and I don't think I need to exercise anymore, by golly, because, things are going so well. I just exercised to get me started on this little diet campaign or this little health improvement campaign, so I don't need to do that anymore. Watch out for the seduction of success when it comes to training yourself to form new habits. Let's take a look at learning from another way. This is a very classic one. I think that many of you have heard of it. These are the 4 stages of learning where we start out with being unconsciously incompetent, moving into being consciously incompetent, then we move into being consciously competent, and finally into unconsciously competent. I'll take this back to the cash flow analogy. When we first start in business, we may not even be aware that it's important to do cash flow forecasting. We are unconsciously incompetent. We have no idea what cash flow forecasting is about, and we don't even know that we need to develop that skill. Then at some point in time, we look at our bank account and go, holy mackerel, I'm bouncing checks. I'm having a challenge meeting payroll, and we become conscious of our incompetence. And then we start developing the skill set of doing cash flow management, cash flow forecasting, and we become consciously competent. It's a struggle for us. We have to think about it because we're still starting to develop the skill set, and we haven't integrated that into our subconscious yet until we move into phase 4, which is when we have mastered it and we become unconsciously competent, which means thinking about cash flow becomes second nature to us. As I said earlier, with every single financial transaction, it becomes second nature to us to be unconsciously competent at what we do. And there's another way of looking at learning. Here's some steps to learning, and I've kind of hinted at these before. First, we become aware of it. Then we consider doing it. Then we try it out. Then we practice it. And then we own it. Then it becomes second nature to us. The analogy I might use here is public speaking. We become aware that public speaking might be advantageous to us in our business, and we start to consider it. Well, maybe I might step out on stage and give a speech. And then we try it. Maybe we go to a local Toastmasters group and we join it and we begin to try it. And then we practice it. And then we practice it. And then we practice it. And then we own it. And then it becomes second nature for us. I talk about this a lot in the inspirational works that I create around the practice of awakening, which, as you get to know me, you'll know that that's my primary lesson for other people, my primary sharing with other people around personal and spiritual growth is on the practice of awakening. First, we become aware that there is such a thing as higher consciousness and peace of mind. And then we consider doing it, and we think, wow, maybe I could experience that for myself. And then we try it with meditation or yoga or prayer or something that we can use to shift our energy and raise our consciousness and increase our love a little bit. And then we practice it day after day after day, hour after hour. We practice forgiving other people. We practice forgiving ourselves. We practice letting go of our stress and our tension. And we practice our own awakening time after time after time until we own it, until we become that person that we want to be by following these steps of learning and through the power of repetition and the power of practice. And here's yet another way of looking at the learning challenges that we face. This is a classic learning pyramid, and as always, I want to give credit to the National Training Laboratories who created this diagram that I found on the internet. There are lots of them out there, by the way. If you'll just go out and search, and I always say Google it, but I recognize that there's other search engines as well. If you just go do a little search on how we learn or the habit, the forming habits, you'll find a wealth of material out there. And here's one of the most valuable ones that I found. It talks about the retention rates of students, that they only retain 5% of what they hear, 10% of what they read. And I believe, by the way, that's because it takes greater focus to read something than it does to listen something. So we increase our focus quotient on our formula, on our learning formula, faith times focus times repetition times passion squared. Just by reading it instead of just listening to it, we increase the focus, so we increase the learning and increase the retention. When we have audio-visual associated with it, like the presentations that I am giving along with the words that you're hearing me speak, it represents another level of focus, which also increases the learning. And then if we have a demonstration of somebody talking to us about a story or an analogy or an example, in essence, we are demonstrating that, and demonstrating how we apply that in different areas of our life increases the retention rate and improves the learning. And then we get into the participatory teaching methods of group discussion, and that's one of the reasons we invite questions at the end of all of our presentations, so we can have a discussion, because that discussion helps you integrate those concepts and principles into your daily life a little bit. And then, of course, we oftentimes offer homework to allow you to practice and practice it. And at some point in time when you get really competent, I encourage you to teach others. I know that my level of competency increases a lot by the privilege that I have of sharing what I have learned with other people. It helps me to focus. I spend sometimes hours in a week preparing these little 20 or 30-minute presentations so I can share with you what I have learned in a very, cogent way, in a way that I really hope helps you learn it too. But there are challenges to learning, by the way. Here are some of the challenges that I face in my own life. Check and see if you face them in yours too. First of all is fatigue. I know that sometimes, by golly, I'm just not in a learning mode. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I haven't had enough sleep, and my brain is just not functioning as well as I would like for it to do. And when that comes up, I'm just resistant to starting the learning process. So fatigue is a big thing for me. There are some times of the day that I learn a lot better than other ones. I'm an early morning learner. When I get up in the morning, have a little exercise, have a little cup of coffee, have a little breakfast, I am working at my very best, and I have optimum learning potential at that point in time. However, there are some people that learn best later on in the day. I remember when my kids were growing up, I couldn't believe it, but they seemed to want to watch a few TV shows, do a little whatever, and start their homework at 10 p.m. And I know that in college I did that as well. That was the time of day that they were able to focus more. It was almost like their brain needed to slow down a little bit, that they needed a little fatigue in order to focus better and do their homework. So there may be times a day when you learn better than other times a day. Hunger shuts you down because brain doesn't work nearly as fast when you have low sugar. So you may want to get just a little snack. I'm a big fan of peanut M&Ms. So just 3 peanut M&Ms, holy mackerel, lifts my mood, lifts my blood sugar, gives me a little protein, and I'm ready to go again. Dehydration's a big one. I've been at the CEO Space Conference all this week in Lake Las Vegas, right outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, where the humidity is extremely low, and I felt it 2 or 3 times this week, where I was just feeling a little sluggish, feeling just a little bit slow, a little bit off my game. And then I went and had like 4 or 5 cups of water, and it was amazing the way I was able to think much more clearly and respond, I think, with an extra few IQ points because I addressed the issue of dehydration. Distractions can be sometimes challenges to learning, and honestly, sometimes they can be helpful to learning too. Sometimes I can perform and learn really well when music is playing in the background or even a TV show is running in the background. It actually helps me focus by having something to focus against. But sometimes distractions help me, they cause me not to be able to focus. So I would invite you to try to have a little more silent environment, or perhaps even add a little background to your environment to allow you to focus a little bit more. And the last thing, and one of the biggest things that can represent a challenge to learning for me and for you, I suspect, is fear. As it turns out, facing our fears can be one of the bravest things that we do, one of the most important things that we can do in order to accelerate our learning. And there are 3 different levels of fear that my friend Rhonda Britton talks about. She talks about stretches, which means that it's just a little bit fearful to us. She talks about going into risk, which can be a lot fearful to us. And then there is always the die mode, which is, I would rather do anything else in the world than do this. And oftentimes, the biggest challenge to learning is the level of fear that we have. If we want to learn to be a public speaker, for some people, that's just a little stretch. For other people, it's a gulp, and and I really need to psych myself up for this because it's a big risk. And for other people, it is an absolute die. Throw me off the building, throw me under the bus, do anything, throw me in the briar patch, but I'd rather do anything than get out on stage and face an audience. So ask yourself, if what is really holding you back from learning to do the things that you need to learn to do, if that's some level of fear. And if it is, then one of my colleagues, Audra, often says, suck it up, cupcake, which you may need to do that. But if you're having problems doing that, but you still have that hesitation, that resistance, and you just can't take that next step, then I might invite you to connect with Rhonda Britton and the Fearless Living Institute, who has some marvelous, marvelous programs to help you become a more courageous, brave, daring, bold person and be able to face your fears and overcome your fears and take those steps towards learning what you need to learn and doing what you need to do in order to be successful in your business. I'm going to conclude by going back to where I was at the very beginning. You have the astonishing power, the magnificent capacity to learn and grow and transform. You have been learning skills, languages, and attitudes both consciously and subconsciously from before you were born. You are learning right now, and you will never stop learning. Repetition and passion combine to give you the glorious ability to condition yourself to become the person you want to be through the power of your mind and through the power of controlled thought. Here's some homework and some exercise for you. Study the ways in which you learn best. Find out the time of day that you learn best. Find out where you are on the learning curve and whether this is something that started out easy and now it's tough, or whether this is something that started out hard and it's bound to get easier. Get with someone to give you a lecture, to discuss it, to help you integrate it, to show you how, to give you examples, to hold your hand, to do it, to show you how to do it, then perhaps to do it with you so that you can learn to do it yourself. And then to really cap off your learning, teach somebody else how to do what it is that was tough for you to do so that you can really integrate that into your heart and soul. That's your homework and your exercise. Study learning. Become a student of becoming a student. Find out what works best for you, the time of day, the right environments, etc. Mix them up so that you can become a better learner and you can accelerate the pace at which you learn the things that you need to learn. We're going to have open questions and answers in just a minute. Comments and questions are invited first on the topic of the day, and then we'll move on to any other issues. But before I have a few closing remarks, an invitation to join my tribe on Skype, where we can communicate with each other and support each other. I also want you to connect with me on Facebook. Every day for the last few weeks, I have been posting an energy of the day, and if you're my friend, then you're going to get that on your wall. And I expect to do that every day for probably the next 5 years at least. I have a lot of content prepared. So that's my little way of encouraging you every single day. And speaking of encourage, that's the energy of the day. Encourage someone today. Remind them of the power that they have and the fantastic future that awaits them. That's my energy of the day, and every day we're going to have a different energy. I encourage you to study. I encourage you to watch the Business Survival Boot Camp so you can learn key business survival strategies, learn about the business complexity profile, and so much more. Watch other office hours recordings that are up and available to you for free, and then purchase and study Beyond Business Survival. Beyond Business Survival is my critical small business owner training program. It's what you need to know when you're the CEO. Helps you avoid those mistakes that I've seen hundreds of other people make, those mistakes that slowed them down or shut them down completely. I'm convinced that this program is worth $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 or more, and I really urge you to take that program. I've also got a wide variety of services that I provide, available for group coaching, private mentoring, strategic plans, business plans, and financial models. My programs start as low as just a couple of $100. And I'm also available for radio interviews, webinars, teleseminars, and I've got a nice affiliate program in place. The new year is almost here. 2013 is almost begun. I'm recording this live on December the 16th. You may be listening to the recording late in 2013 or even at the beginning of 2014. And if so, please note that I am offering a day-long virtual workshop for creating your annual action plan for 2014, right now scheduled for Saturday, January the 11th and Saturday, January the 18th. To find out more and sign up for that program, go to www.annualactionplan.com. That's annualactionplan.com. I know that by creating and defining your goals for 2014, that you will accomplish more. It's just a given fact. That's my experience personally, and my experience with all of my clients. You define your goals, hopefully stretch goals, and then even beyond that, the really big, hairy ass goals. That's, by the way, a formal term, the BHAG, big, hairy ass goal. I didn't make that up, but I love it. For 2014, I know that you will accomplish more when you do that. I'm also introducing a brand new program called Success Between the Spaces. I am at the CEO Space Conference right now, leaving the hotel later today for home in Santa Clara, California. The next CEO Space Business Growth Conference is March the 23rd through 30th, 2014. And in this cycle, I'm introducing a brand new group coaching and masterminding program called Success Between the Spaces. It's 13 group coaching collaborative sessions to help you keep the momentum up and help you make amazing progress between these business growth conferences. Go to www.successbetweenthespaces.com to find out more about that program and sign up. So those are my two new programs, annualactionplan.com and successbetweenthespaces.com, so I can help you make amazing progress in your business in between now and the next Business Growth Conference and throughout all of 2014. Next Monday, we're going to talk about something, but I'm not sure what it is. The topic is to be determined, so let me know what topics that you would like for me to address by going to paulssurvey.com. So go to paulssurvey.com and let me know what's coming up for you. I may just spend 2 or 3 hours creating a small 20, 30-minute presentation that's really helpful for you to address the challenges that you're facing right now in your business. Watch the Business Survival Boot Camp in the meantime and do your homework that we talked about earlier. So let's break and talk about comments and questions that you have on the topic of the day first, and then any other questions that you might have. I'll keep these links up here at paulsurvey.com, and you can, of course, contact me at paul@paulhoyt.com or give me a call at 415-997-8001. That's 415-997-8001 anytime. I'm eager to talk about the many ways in which I can support you on achieving your dreams and achieving your business goals. And with that, I'm going to open it up to my lovely assistant, Audra, and see, Audra, if we have any questions that we might address for our presentation today.
Good afternoon, Paul. Actually, we have a couple. There's one sort of generic one that resonates with me personally. Someone's saying, I'm stuck. What should I do now?
I'm going to interpret that as that you're stuck somewhere on your learning curve. That I would invite you to consider that learning curve, because if you're stuck, it can be one of those places where you're just at a slow beginning point, or as it turns out, that learning curve happens at various times during the learning process. So we might hit a particular level of mastery and get stuck when it comes to really accelerating it and getting to that next level of competence or mastery. And if we find ourselves to be stuck, I would encourage you to think about that, hey, I'm starting another learning curve. I'm back at that point to where I'm at a point in my learning to where it's going slow, but if I stick with it, if I remind myself of the value of learning this particular skill or technique, if I ask myself those critical questions of how am I going to feel if I quit, and how am I going to feel when I succeed, and how am I going to feel 5 years from now whenever I have succeeded and mastered this, it can help us ramp up our passion and ramp up our focus and keep after the practice, practice, practice. So those are, I guess, the 4 things. If you find yourself stuck, think about having faith in yourself and your ability to overcome this obstacle. Think about focusing more time and attention on it. Think about practicing and repetition, and think about having the passion of focusing on it, and remind yourself why you're doing it in the first place, and ramp up that energy and that desire to focus on it, to become unstuck. Those are some of the things you might do. Also, I encourage you to pick up the phone and talk to somebody on your team. Everybody needs to have a cheerleader on their team, and sometimes it's really handy just to say, pick up the phone and call Audra and say, Audra, I think I'm stuck, and let her remind me of the ability that I have, and that this is just a little sticking point. It's just a little speed bump or a hurdle or maybe even a wall that I need to bust through, dig underneath, or walk around in some way to get through the obstacle that I'm facing right now. So cheerleaders and focus and passion and repetition, all those things can help you get unstuck. I hope that was helpful. Audra, next question.
Paul, that was helpful. I would also like to add to everyone, if you do feel like you're stuck, Paul has got the tribe on Skype and his Facebook, so I would suggest that's a good place to start.
Excellent. Got another question for me, Audra?
We do. Again, it's more on how do you prioritize when there's so much to learn you don't really know what to do? What do you do?
I have a lot of different prioritization techniques, but my biggest one is to do a quick decision matrix. And that's one of the things that I oftentimes help my clients do, is go through a decision matrix where we evaluate all of the things that they could be focusing time and energy on and figure out what their success criteria are, or the factors or decision criteria are, and weight each one of those options based upon the decision criteria that they choose. For example, if I'm running low on money and cash, one of my big decision criteria for choosing what to do next might be short-term cash flow. Does this particular activity have the promise of putting cash in my bank account in a very short period of time? If you're really running low on cash, that becomes maybe the most significant of the decision criteria. And identifying all of your options, identifying what your decision criteria are, weighting those decision criteria and ranking your options across any one of those decision criteria can be a really good thing to help you figure out for yourself what to do next. Now, I will say that I'm an analyst. One of my dominant thinking styles is that of being an analyst. So almost anything that you ask me, my answer to that is going to be analyze it. So like if you go to a carpenter and ask them for a solution to a problem, you can be pretty darn sure that it's going to involve a hammer and a nail. If you come to me and ask me for a solution to a problem, you can be pretty darn sure that that solution is going to have something to do with analyze and make a decision and then act upon the decisions that you make. So that's generally my advice and my counsel, and the way that I'm able to help people most is to help them analyze their particular situation, analyze the options that they have in front of them, and then make good decisions and take action on the decisions that they have. Hopefully that was helpful. Audra, next question, please.
We have one, yep, sorry about that. We do have one more.
Okay.
I know you mentioned Rhonda for helping get over your fear or paralysis, but what do you do when you find yourself afraid to do or try or be something?
You know, fortunately at this stage of game in my life, those fears don't last very long. I've been facing my fears and learning the lessons that only my fears can teach me for a long, long, long time. You know, and at some point in time, I had the good fortune of learning to become a humble person. So whenever I sense a little bit of fear, and I still do feel a little bit of fear from time to time, especially when I screw up. When I screw up and make a mistake, I go, oh, you know, maybe expletive there. You know, I made another mistake, and it tags me. But just for a little while, just for a couple of minutes, and just for a little bit. And then I look at that and say, yep, I screwed up. I'm not afraid to admit it. I know that I'm going to forgive myself very quickly because I'm a human person. And I'm going to face that fear, learn the lesson that the fear has to teach me, and move through that fear, and again, learn what I need to do. So fear doesn't shut me down anymore, whether it becomes fear of writing a book, fear of singing a song in front of thousands of people, fear in front of doing these office hours presentations that are recorded, fears when it comes to posting on Facebook. Every single one of those things at some point in time in my life, I had a little resistance and a little hesitation to doing them, a little fear to doing those, but I don't see those much anymore. And the key for me, by the way, is just facing those fears. A good friend of mine, John Pearson, who lives in Southern California, calls it kissing the dragon's lips. He says that is the way that we learn. So when you have something that scares the bejesus out of you, just imagine that you are one of the most courageous people on the face of this planet, and kiss the dragon's lips. Face those fears and go after those fears. And when you face those fears with courage, daring, bravery, and boldness, the fears will no longer have control over you, and you'll be able to move through them and learn what you need to learn. That's my answer. Audra, next question, please.
I love it. I think I'm going to get that T-shirt. And actually, Paul, we have one more question from Dave. Thank you, Dave. He says, all so-called secrets of success will not work unless you do.
I love that.
And following up to that, sorry about my delay here, he wants to know how you stay motivated.
I'm not sure that I know how I stay motivated. I've always been a guy that just loves learning. There's something about, you know, the life that I live that I look out at the world every day and I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at the experience of living life. I'm amazed at a hummingbird flying by or a grasshopper, you know, crawling on the ground. I'm amazed at the people that I meet and the courage that they have and the genius that they have. It's just, you know, every second of every day I'm just amazed at life. And that keeps me motivated, excited, energized as I reach this stage in my life and this level of consciousness and this, you know, level of wisdom and joy and love that I've achieved after working on myself for so long. I just stay motivated and inspired. So that, my answer might not be your answer. If anyone out there is having challenges being motivated or being inspired, then I encourage you to think about the end game. I encourage you to think about how good life can be when I lose those 20 pounds. how good life can be when I learn to be a great CEO or small business owner, how much better life can be when I improve my relationship skills, when I improve my public relations, my public speaking skills. There, as I said a couple of times, you are a learning, growing machine. You have incredible capability to learn and grow and transform and become the person that you want to be through the power of your mind and through the power of controlled thought. So if you find yourself having a little lack of motivation, if you find yourself having a little lack of inspiration, then by all means pick up the phone and talk to somebody who can remind you of the greatness that you have within you and the potential joy that you have to experience when you learn the things that you need to learn and do the things that you need to do. I'll leave it at that. Audra, what's next, my dear?
Paul, I think we've got it. No more questions.
Did we have a question that came through from Anna that was related to last week's call?
Oh, we did.
I think I kind of remember it. Anna sent me an email, and by the way, I encourage you to do that as well. Anybody out there who's listening to this recording or listening to the call live, if you have some questions about last week's call or anything at all, send them in to us, and after we get through with the questions and comments that are related to this week's subject, we'll turn our attention to the other one. I think I kind of remember this, but not in very much detail. Can you kind of read it to me?
I can. I can actually read you the entire thing. Anna says, hello, Paul. My question for you this week is, if during a negotiation of 3 parties, and there's herself, a genetic lab director, and an investor, what is needed for her to safeguard her work at the time of negotiation when the lab director wants to get the funding from the investor to do the stem cell research for the next 10 years?
I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways. So one way is that if you're working in a laboratory and you discovered something or invented something when you were working for somebody else using their equipment and on their time and on their salary, they may actually own that and not you. That's not necessarily true, but almost always when we go to work for a lab or go to work for a company that's creating things, we sign a non-compete. We may sign an agreement called a PIIA, a Proprietary Inventions and Information Agreement, which essentially assigns everything that we create while we are in the context of employment with one particular company to that company. So it may be, in fact, that you don't have any intellectual property rights to that which you have discovered at all if you discovered it while you were in the employment, and especially while you were on the job using their equipment and collaborating with their employees. So that's answer number 1. Honestly, take a look whether or not you have any rights to that. If you feel like you do have rights to it, then a non-disclosure, non-circumvent, non-compete agreement, a legal agreement, may be in order. So, for example, by the way, if you're working in a laboratory, but in your spare time in another laboratory on the evenings and weekends, you've been doing your own research, which is not using their time, not using their money, not using their equipment, and is unrelated in some way, you may have complete ownership over that which you have discovered. But in which case you do that, before I would talk to anybody about the ability that they have to leverage your work and your intellectual property and get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But my strong suspicion is, dear, that if it was related to the work that you were doing in a lab, that they may actually have at least joint ownerships of the intellectual property, if not entire ownership of the intellectual property. You may want to check with an intellectual property attorney to see what your rights and privileges are, or have an open and frank discussion with the lab director about whether or not you can leverage, have any sort of ownership at all into that which you created. So I wish that I had a better answer for you, and that may be a tough nut to swallow, but that's, I believe, the exact position that you're in. So Audra,
so
and the dog.
yeah, I apologize for that. That's what caused my hesitation here. So Anna has been letting us know that, no, she does not work specifically for that lab. She's an independent contractor And this is a discovery that she actually sort of found out on her own, and I believe it's, you know, her wanting to go to this lab director and this investor, because those are the other two people of this party that she wants to form this relationship with.
Excellent. And Anna, I am assuming that you may have listened to the office hours presentation I did last week on joint ventures, and I'm glad that you're in that position. Believe me, I'm hugely glad that you're in that position and able to leverage your invention and your time and your talent to your own best interest there. So it starts with an NDA. It starts with a non-disclosure agreement. It starts with some sort of them recognizing in writing that you own that intellectual property, that they're not going to do, the most intense NDA is a non-disclosure, non-circumvent, and non-compete agreement. Those are sometimes three separate agreements, but sometimes we see them in the context of a single agreement. Non-disclosure means they're not going to tell anybody about it. Non-circumvent means that they won't go around your back and form an agreement with somebody else. And non-compete means that they agree for some period of time not to compete with you on that, for the privilege of having the discussion about forming a joint venture or an alliance or some sort of collaborative effort to take your invention to the marketplace. So that's the next step. And I encourage you to get with a intellectual property attorney or a general counsel to get that agreement. And I have some, you know, if you want to send me an email, paul@paulhoyt.com, I can send you a basic agreement, and I'm happy to do that for free, but I don't provide legal advice. And if this is, you know, a $1 million opportunity or a $1 billion opportunity, then, you know, please immediately go get legal counsel, because I think that's the best thing for you. Thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Audra.
Yep, so Anna, it sounds like you have an amazing thing going. I think her issue is that it is sort of like a theory or something as basic like a multiplication table in math, but she's got something figured out in genetics. So imagine like
Perfect.
a periodic table in chemistry, but applied to genetics. Anna, it sounds like an amazing thing.
I'm fascinated. Anna, please keep me posted on that. And I encourage you to go, you know, pick up the phone and call an IP attorney and talk about how do I protect myself. Because it's worth it for you to spend a few $100 or at least a few minutes to make sure that you're protecting yourself before you start those conversations. You want them to acknowledge in writing that you're the person that discovered it. Okay? That's it. Any more questions, Audra?
Nope, that will do it.
All right, well, we're going to bring...
Wait. Whoa,
oh, okay.
hold on.
All right.
Dave, you just hit it right under the bell there. So he still wants to know how you became such a handsome man. Sorry, Dave. Oh, that was funny.
Okay, so the way I become a handsome man was good lighting and makeup. That's about it.
Oh, and I might add, Dave, great branding.
Oh, yes, great branding, too. from Audra, my branding partner here. Okay, well, I'm gonna call that good. Thanks for that comment and that kind word. I wish everybody a happy holidays. We're going to do this again next Monday, which will be December the 23rd, just a couple of days before celebrating Christmas. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be. Please go to paulssurvey.com and let me know what you would like for me to talk about, and I'll be excited to create a little presentation, and we'll talk about it on our next office hours. In between now and then, be good, be safe, think about doing your homework, and as always, this is Paul wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
The organizer has